The Detroit Red Wings signed Vladimir Tarasenko and trade away Robby Fabbri. Does this move the needle in the right direction for the Detroit Red Wings?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. I'm a former broadcast producer for 97.1 The Ticket, where Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. And want to thank you guys for making Locked On Red Wings your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Scotty, it's nice seeing you again before we get to that, happy 4th of July, as this will be the 4th of July episode. Happy 4th of July. The Red Wings signed a Russian.
There you go. Well, it's funny because we had already recorded at one point today, and then we were talking about like 4th of July content, and we were like trying to think, and then all of that just kind of goes out the window, and the Wings make a big move. But happy 4th to you too, bud.
Yeah, I think I will clip and probably censor the end of that episode.
You're
because
have to censor it a lot. I'm not even. It might just be 15 seconds of just a censor if you do that. But it is a funny clip.
You've never heard somebody so angry to get an Impact signing, because we were literally finishing up.
31-minute mark. Like we were done. We were I was about to say we ball. Like we were like wrapping up the show. And then
breaking news, Tarasenko show is coming to Hockeytown. It's like, Steve, you mother. I was mad.
It was really wild. It was a wild roller coaster of emotions. Brian was like, yeah, but no. It was really a wild. It was a wild.
They did this to us on Sunday. Remember? Because we were like, listen, Patrick Kane signing a 1-year deal, Emily Kaplan, Elliot Friedman, all these guys are reporting it. I'm not at a 1-year deal. I don't really know if any amount of money you're going to give him outside of like something exorbitant is going to really change my opinion. So let's just record. 25 minutes in, they officially announce it, breaks $4 million. Now we have to re-record. It's the second time this week, and we waited on Sunday too. We waited till like 9, 10 o'clock at night to finally record. Today, we were less patient, but we had things going on, so we were like, let's just roll the dice, and it didn't work out our way. But anyway, Scotty, we're 3 minutes in already. We got to talk about the Vladimir Tarasenko signing. He was a name we brought up yesterday on the Is Yzerman Done episode. We were like, there's not much left on the open market. There's Tarasenko, Sprong. You could go the trade route for Natchez, but like, there's not a lot of options left. Well, one of those three guys we named is one of the guys the Red Wings picked up. What is your, instant reaction to the signing of Vladimir Tarasenko to a 2-year, $4.75 million per year contract?
Yeah, I like it, man. I think that this definitely addresses a lot of needs that the Wings have. I think there's a lot to break down with this. I think fit in the lineup card is a big conversation. I also think who are his line mates going to be is somewhat of a conversation. But I think that this, at the end of the day, anything we talk about in this show will go back to the beginning of this conversation, which is you wanted top 6 goal scoring and offense. And you wanted, again, to solidify that top 6. And with the amount of offense that the Wings have seen kind of walk out the door, they've been more depth pieces, but like they have objectively seen goals walk out the door and go to other organizations or are still free agents or whatnot. And so having somebody fill in that not only is going to score goals, but score goals hopefully at a relatively high clip and solidifies, I think, your top 6 in one signing is definitely nice. It's something that I think it's important to discuss the risks of it as well. I don't think this is just like a guaranteed, this is going to, he's going to score 40 goals and it's going to be all sunshine and rainbows. Like, I think that there is some things to talk about as well, as far as like the risk factor of it all. But at the end of the day, I'm really pleased with it. I love the term. I have zero issue with the contract whatsoever, especially after the Fabbri trade, which we'll talk about later. But even before that, I think that this is more than fine term. And yeah, I'm really pleased, and I think that at a minimum, this somewhat relieves the stress and the anxiety surrounding, like, are we going to get any of these goals back, and who is the sixth forward in the top six?
Yeah, I mean, before the signing of Tarasenko, we were all kind of waiting with bated breath, right? And we had talked, absolutely they're going to sign. They're going to do something else because there's no way you can walk into the season with this roster. I think at a bare minimum now, the team's kind of made is laterally as good, while leaving room for the youth to make an impact, which is kind of exactly what we were asking for. Obviously, we want improvements, but I mean, in terms of having guys to try and make it so you don't slide in terms of veterans, but also leaving opportunities for your youth. And Vladimir Tarasenko, I mean, I think he is an upgrade over David Perron. Now, they're not one-for-one guys, but David Perron was clearly slowing down these last couple of years. Last year in particular, you really noticed it. His 5-on-5 points were really starting to drop off. Tarasenko takes that spot from David Perron as your top six scoring winger. He can finish a shot like no one else in the league. This last year, I think he had 23 goals in 76 games played, a total of 56 points. Between the Ottawa Senators and the Florida Panthers, and the Ottawa Senators team this last year was not that good. So I like this as, for the Red Wings, as just like, again, getting that impact player in the top six that they need. He's been healthy the last few years as well, relatively healthy. He's missed a few games in each of the last 3 seasons, but nothing like crazy after having 2 seasons where he went 10 and 24 games in 1920 and 2021. So like health isn't that big of a concern anymore with him outside of like normal, getting nicked and banged up.
Mid-30s,
yeah. So I think this is an upgrade over David Perron. The question then becomes, and as far as term goes, like 4.75 at 2 years is like exactly what Evolving Hockey predicted. And I just want to commend Steve Yzerman, right, for staying patient and not overpaying through the nose for guys. Like, and in the last few years, like we've even mentioned, like these are a little bit of overpayments. That's free agency, but this year he really didn't do that. Like Patrick Kane at $4 million. Tarasenko at 4.75, and then the Talbot at 2.5, Gustafsson at 2 was it? Like these are all good signings at good dollars. Now they have $20 million left to sign their RFAs. Like these were really good signings, and I want to commend him on that. But Tarasenko again is just really going to help reassure that top six. But the question then becomes, where's he going to play? Because he is a left shot winger that likes to play on his off wing. Red Wings have a lot of those, and a lot of them happen to be left shots. Raymond, obviously the exception. He's a right shot winger who likes to play on the right shot or the right side. But Patrick Kane, left shot winger, plays on his off wing on the right side. Tarasenko is the same way. DeBrincat's the same way on the other side. So right now, as it stands, your depth on the right side is Lucas Raymond, Patrick Kane, and Vladimir Tarasenko. Does Tarasenko go back to his natural left side? I'm sorry, you're not making Patrick Kane go to his, like you're not telling Hockey Hall of Fame Patrick Kane, who's the best playmaker, one of the best playmakers in NHL history. Sorry, buddy, you got to go back to the left side. That's not happening. Or do you make Lucas Raymond go back to his off wing on the left side, which he can do, and I think he has done at moments with the Detroit Red Wings. That becomes a major question with how you're constructing this roster. Because ideally, you want DeBrincat, Tarasenko, Kane, and Raymond all in your top six all at once. Because that really makes that top six a threat. Especially like Kane to Tarasenko, Kane's playmaking ability and finishing ability, feeding Tarasenko's finishing ability. Or Kane to Cat, same concept there. Raymond's a good playmaker and a good finisher. Like there's a lot of potential for goals in this top six, especially not even talking about Larkin in there as well. So how do you make it work? And that's just such an interesting concept that I'm glad I'm not the one who has to figure that out, because I don't know what the right answer is for that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll have a much clearer picture of that when we see them all on the ice together, right? And that's a fairly like Captain Obvious thing to say, but I think that preseason is going to be really interesting for that, and that'll be something we can look at when that happens. But at the end of the day, I mean, clearly this isn't like a surprise to anybody involved, Tarasenko or the Red Wings, that this is how the current lineup card looks. and I'm sure it's been discussed, and I'm sure they already have plenty of ideas on what to do about it. I'm not really too worried about it, to be honest. Like, I think that is something that will resolve itself, and it'll iron out. And at the end of the day, you had an opportunity to, for, again, a very reasonable term and a very reasonable contract, get a goal scorer of this caliber. I think you do it, and you worry about that later.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, final line on Tarasenko, he is that impact winger. He's not like Steven Stamkos, but he's the impact winger that I wanted the Red Wings to get for their second line. He has incredible finishing ability. He's not good defensively, but he's still an upgrade over an aging David Perron for not that much more money. In fact, he's signed to the same exact contract, I believe, that David Perron originally was signed to with the Detroit Red Wings. So even at a rising cap, that contract even looks better. So, and of course, he's another asset you can use on the power play and will be fantastic on the power play. So, yeah, I loved it. This Tarasenko signing makes this offseason look so much better.
Right.
So, like, this was one of the signings that we were hoping Yzerman would make. So, kind of a sigh of relief. He's going to be really good at the Detroit Red Wings, and whether it's across from Kane, across from Raymond, whoever, he's going to be eating good. And I'm really excited to see whatever he does in the top six.
Absolutely. No, this, like you said, this really makes the off season and the offense, I guess, look a lot better on paper, certainly. And I think that, look, I mean, I still think that, everything we said earlier this week is still very fair. And I don't think that this signing makes the Wings like they're guaranteed to, put up 95, 98, 100 points now. But I do think that this at least makes you, right? I asked you the question on Monday, are we a better team than we were before free agency started? And now I at least think that you are at least back to where you were, if not kind of starting that conversation now.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll talk about the Robby Fabbri trade. So stay tuned for that in segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. Save up to 60% off buying last minute for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. Save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. Save even more when you let Game Time choose the section and the seats, and the lowest price guarantee means that Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference if you find the same seats somewhere else for less. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, right after the Tarasenko signing went down, more breaking news came across. The Red Wings traded Robby Fabbri and a conditional 2025 fourth-round pick to the Anaheim Ducks for goaltender Gage Alexander. I think the most important thing to address on this trade is the fact that the Red Wings have acquired another goaltender.
Yes. Yet another one. And like, I mean, he's what? And he played in the ECHL. Like, yeah.
It was just.
For sure, right? But yes, they do acquire another goalie. Obviously, this trade just made to free up some cap. Robby's cap hit was what, $4 million? And I think that if you're looking up and down this roster and you're looking for players who may not be worth their salary and are getting paid a decent amount of money, he was one of the candidates really from the start of the offseason that was always going to be at least in that conversation of being kind of a victim of a salary dump trade like that. So not the most surprising thing in the world. Love Robby Fabbri. Wish him nothing but the best in Anaheim, assuming that they keep him on the roster and whatnot there. But yeah, this was pretty clearly. I mean, it almost was 1-for-1. You're playing Tarasenko a little bit more, but it was almost just like you remove Fabbri's contract and you slide this one in there. So pretty clearly, just a move so that they could still have enough money to extend Seider and Raymond even after signing Tarasenko. But I mean, that's some more offense and some more depth offense walking out the door, and that's been something that the Wings have seen a lot of, but they added some defensive pieces between the margins, and then just got a guy who you hope can be a higher end goal scorer at the top. So it makes the offseason, all of this makes the offseason look a whole lot different than it did, 24, 48 hours ago.
Right, and we talked a lot about defense and goaltenders that the Red Wings could move to shed salary because to us it seems so obvious. But honestly, like after they traded Robby Fabbri, I'm like looking at it and going, yeah, this was a really obvious option too. He's slightly overpaid, right? $4 million's not bad for a guy who, in his career with the Detroit Red Wings, is just slightly over half point per game, but it is definitely overpaid, especially when you consider that he has continuous health problems, and that's not his fault. You can't control staying healthy, but they do say the best ability is availability. And he, even last year, he played his most games ever with the Detroit Red Wings. And that was still only 68 games because he missed a good chunk at the beginning of the season due to an injury, not to mention his multiple ACLs. And again, that's not his fault, and I'll never blame a guy for getting injured because that's unfair. But it is important when you're telling, in the context of the story, when you're paying a guy $4 million to be, a middle six winger, a top six winger at the early stages of the rebuild. It just over time, he continually got injured, and he was getting pushed down the depth chart as the Red Wings continued to get a little bit better. This last year, he played at times, if not a significant chunk, if I'm remembering correctly, on the fourth line. Like, even though his production last year still wasn't bad, 18 goals, 32 points for 68 games, you can't pay a fourth liner.
Yeah.
You can't pay a fourth liner $4 million. And he had no trade protection, so it just made sense. And you're giving up the condition on the fourth round pick that you're giving up is, again, just like the first round pick you gave up in the DeBrincat trade, it's whoever finishes better, right? So you had 2 fourth round picks to give, and at least this time when you shed salary, it's for a guy that was overpaid. Again, Robby Fabbri is a decent offense-first winger. I like Robby Fabbri a lot, and he's given us some fun moments. He scored hat tricks with the Detroit Red Wings. He's scored some clutch goals, but I think it just made sense. As far as Gage Alexander goes, he's a former fifth-round pick by the Anaheim Ducks in 2021, and as you noted, he's played pretty much exclusively in the ECHL the last couple of years. In fact, I think it was exclusively this past year, putting up like an .890 save percentage. It's just more goalie depth. Toledo Wall, I need goalies too. So I'm not really... He might push too for Grand Rapids. Who knows? It could be competition in training camp for the Griffins as well. But like I say in jest that they got another goalie because of course it was another goalie. But as he's not gonna be pushing for an NHL job, I don't imagine, unless barring some kind of huge development in his game this offseason.
No,
but I mean,
this trade was to get the salary off the books.
It was just nice to get something back for once.
Right. That's what this trade was for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I hate to see Fabbri go because he's been a part of this team since literally the worst season the Red Wings have ever had, right? The 19-20 season, that was the year that they were
on that team.
He was on that team. That's the year they acquired him. 52 games with the Red Wings, he had 31 points. Man. Again, and that's the thing, like he was over half point per game every year except this year where he was just under half point per game. Like that's good production from a bottom six winger. You're just paying him $4 million, which is too much. Yeah. So you had to let him go. Also, you mentioned that you shed more offense, right? That's one thing we've talked about is they've lost a lot of that really good depth offense they had this year. But this is another guy that did not play great defense either. And so you might be getting better defensively just by moving on from that player and replacing him with someone else. So, and that's a conversation that we did have on the Lost episode. We had that whole entire conversation about, is how much
we can
better defensively.
We can keep that one in the back pocket, and we got a whole off season still ahead of us. So
that's a later in July conversation now. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, as far as it goes, like trading away Robby Fabbri allowed you to upgrade massively in the top six by signing Vladimir Tarasenko. It's pretty much a no-brainer in my eyes.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, he's not going to be not going to be great defensively. I think if him and Kane are on a line together, you're going to really deploy that one pretty carefully. I'm not sure that that's going to be. I
You
think
better
that
hope they never ice it from the D zone.
correct. Yeah, that might be a line that does not see the wings zone very often if they do share a line together. But there's a lot of offensive upside there that's really really exciting. And yeah, man, I'm pumped. This was again, this completely changes the outlook of the offseason, I think. And I think my thing now is, I know we got to get to a break too. My thing now is I want, maybe I'm greedy. I want more. I want something else as well. Cause I think right now you're similar to where you were last year, just with different personnel. And again, maybe more of a defensive orientation in mind when adding some of these players, but that can be a whole like kind of a bigger picture conversation maybe later this week. But I do think that there's a conversation to be had for like now, how much different are the Red Wings from last year to this year after this signing, and at least makes it a lot more of a conversation than it was 24 hours ago. So we'll gladly take it.
I mean, there could still be more coming, or this could be it. I mean, obviously you have the RFA signings that need to be done, but those are
the
happen.
two possibilities.
Right. But what I was going to say is I think you could make the argument that they did improve in some areas and then got worse in others. And then the question becomes,
where does that level out to?
Well, where does that level out to? And was that the intent? Because Yzerman said, like, got to get better defensively. And there's not a lot of really, really high-end two-way players out there, especially on the free agent market.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, man. Like, so many people are, bring up, and we've said this before on the show. This isn't like a new take, but like, so, people are like, oh, well, what about we need to find somebody who scores that many goals but is better defensively. It's like, well, if a 25 to 30 goal scorer that's really good defensively is going to cost you $8 million a year, like that. Those don't just grow on trees. Those aren't just like out there for the taking all the time, man. That you're talking about one of the elite players in the game at that point. So I think that this is a great addition to the top six. It solidifies your top six. It's really exciting. And hopefully he can push 30 goals. That'd be pretty fun.
That would be sick. Scotty, we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we will rehash one of the conversations we had on the Lost episode, and that would be Tyler Motte. Kind of got overshadowed by the Tarasenko signing. So stay tuned for that in segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, the Red Wings announced on Tuesday night that they had agreed to terms, right? Today's Wednesday. Yeah, Tuesday night. Agreed to terms with Tyler Motte to a 1-year, $800,000 contract. And at first I was like, is this another AHL guy? And I was like, I'm looking at him and I'm looking at his stats. I'm like, no, this guy he's going to be a third or a fourth liner, maybe 13th forward. But the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty confident he'll probably end up being a fourth line player on the Detroit Red Wings. And I actually really like this signing. Yeah, he only had 9 points in 69 games played, but you didn't sign him for points. You signed him to be shut down forward. And that's something he's really good at. And in fact, a lot of fans from other teams are really upset that they did not get Tyler Motte. The Tampa Bay Lightning, where he came from this last season, a lot of fans are like, wow, I wish we had kept him for $800,000 because, one, fans always love another dog, and he is a dog. But also he's huge for PK, right? I think I said on the Lost episode that he was second among forwards in PK time per games played. So he averaged the most penalty kill time amongst forwards on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Like, he's going to be a huge PK guy. He's not going to get a lot of time at 5-on-5, probably about 12, 13 minutes, but it gives the Red Wings a little bit more flexibility in their matchups because you can deploy this guy in the defensive zone to get the puck out and transition up ice to deploy your better lines on the offense. Again, only 12 minutes ice, 12 minutes a night, so it's not going to have that big of an impact, but it does make you a better defensive team.
Yeah, the odds that this dude is dog of the year are very high. Let's just start off with that.
Fisher.
Right. I know we did bring back Fish, so it's a conversation to be had, but Yeah, I love this move. I really do. And like, again, like pre Tarasenko, we were like, oh, like we like all of these. We just haven't got any of like the big splash yet. So um I absolutely love this move. He's not going to produce offense, and that's something that we need to make abundantly clear. Like at no point in his NHL career has he ever produced offense. Again, at the NHL level, but that's not why he continues to get work. He continues to get work because of how good of a defensive forward he is. And I think he's absolutely going to have an everyday spot on this team. I think that he perfectly epitomizes what the Wings tried to do with that quote unquote shutdown line this year, right? It was Kopp, Rasmussen, and who else? Fisher? Was that it? Was that the three that they tried to make like the shutdown line? And they were really good
worked
for like a month. And then like before and after that month, they were really bad though. And it was like this big thing, right? And like this is somebody who you can consistently, no matter who you put him with, can really epitomize that and give you that. I love it. I cannot say enough good things about it. I adore the move. And one of the things that I also think is really under the radar about him is my favorite stat. This past season, he actually took faceoffs for the first time in his entire career and won over 50% of them.
Yep.
And like, I don't know why it took so long. I don't know why it's not something, but he's obviously a left shot forward, so that kind of fits that bill as well. But like, he has never taken consistent, and maybe he just didn't have a big enough role on any teams he played for, but he was never a consistent or really at all for some teams, like person that was in the faceoff circles. In this past year, took over around 150 faceoffs and won just, I think, literally won over 50%. So I think that that's something that, you know, you can get some depth in that department as well. I love it, man. I absolutely love it. These are the kind of players that I think this organization was kind of looking for going into this offseason.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the last few years, he's played over half the games in the season. I could see him. I think he'll be a regular in the lineup as far as he'll play in over half of the games. I think there will be, matchup dependent. There might be nights he sits out, but I think he's going to be real good on the second penalty kill unit for the Detroit Red Wings and just get limited ice time, maybe defensive zone starts for the Detroit Red Wings, help them transition up the ice and free up a little bit for the offense, but also not to overplay his impact as well, because again, he'll probably only play about 12 minutes a night when he does play. It's just he'll be put in important moments defensively for the Detroit Red Wings, and that's what they need is guys who can impact the game defensively, especially among the forward core, because as much offense as the Red Wings lost last year, they do a lot of addition by subtraction probably this year in terms of defensive strength among the forward group.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I like this signing a lot, and I think there's a lot to – the Lost episode was a really good conversation, so we're going to totally rehash that later next week about whether or not this team got better and the areas they did improve, if they got better enough to move the needle. But the signing of Tarasenko does shine a much more positive light on that conversation. I think at a bare minimum, this team is comparably as good as last year, with the added benefit of we probably going to finally see some youth trickle into this lineup. So
I think you're at a position now where like this upcoming season is now really fascinating. You have a solidified top six full of veterans, right? Ranging from, veteran at 23 years old and Raymond all the way to, the opposite end of the spectrum and Patrick Kane, who's in his, twilight years. You have veterans and you have a solidified top six now as well. Like at least going into opening night, you know who your top six are going to be. That's something. When was the last time we were able to say that? Like in a positive light? When was the last time we were like, wow, there's a clear cut, top six on this team? But then also your depth is way more defensive. And last year, one of your biggest strengths was depth scoring. So like having a lot of that depth scoring kind of walk away, which it did, but replacing it with better defensive forwards is a really fascinating test. And then also, to your point, you're injecting a lot of youth into this. You're putting a lot of rookies or really young players into this lineup card as well. You still have 3 NHL goalies and 8 NHL defensemen. Like there's a lot that still could happen. I still think they kind of have the flexibility for a trade if they want to. But I think that this is going to be a really fascinating year.
Yeah, I mean, I think defensively, too, if you look at the D-core, rather, I should say, because we got to be careful when we say the term defensively. If you look at the D-core, I think that there's an upgrade defensively there as well.
For sure.
Simon Edmondson, you're going to have probably for the full season. He'll probably play, second pair left side. That's going to be an upgrade on the second pair immediately. I think Gustafsson, who is an offensive defenseman, is a huge upgrade defensively as well over Shane Gostisbehere. You'll have the option of Albert Johansson or Olli Maatta, depending on matchups for what you want. They still need an impact right side defenseman, if you ask me, because I don't like, and Hull's no guarantee to play on the right side. I think somebody's going to be playing on their offside on defense down there. But overall, I think, again, the defensive core has gotten better, at least, here's that word, marginally. And I think the forward core and the bottom six has gotten defensively better as well. So it is, like you said, it's going to be a really unique season to observe whether or not they slide back, because Lalonde preaches a defense-first system. And now Yzerman is backing that up with more defensive-oriented, obviously Tarasenko notwithstanding, but you needed offense. Like, that's a signing that makes a lot of sense when you realize, like, oh yeah, we just still need to score goals. But the bottom of the forward group has a lot more defense-first forwards now, rather than trying to attack it from a pure depth scoring mindset
that you're bringing outside of Bergeron is more oriented that way as well, right? Like if Marco Kasper does play, like he's a guy that you expect to play a 200-foot game, right? Like Danielson a little bit, maybe not to the extent as Kasper, but like that's another guy, right? I mean, and like Carter Mazur, right? I mean, the list kind of goes on. The youth that we're expecting to make an impact or at least be in the conversation at the NHL level is more defensive minded as well. So another, possibly big shift. And it feels like that's 3 seasons in a row where there's been a lot of turnover. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's just, we'll see what happens type of thing.
I mean, these two most recent signings, like shifted our mindset from this is a slam dunk, going to be a slide back season to, they may still slide back, but also I can see a future where it does work out. Yeah. And now I'm just going to be really interested to see what happens. But like this is a good problem, right? Like we needed the youth movement. That was undeniable. We needed some of these young kids to crack the roster. But whenever that happens comes the risk of taking that step back. And that's why I was saying all offseason that you need, and even on yesterday's episode or the episode before that, like you need to get an impact veteran to help complement that youth so they can help balance out that youthful mistakes with the veteran leadership, right? And like I said, I still think they need that impact defenseman, and they'll have to move out a contract to do that because I think as it stands right now, they got to get Seider and Raymond signed first. But they have $20 million off the cap space. You've got to, I think, in my mind, move somebody out to bring in that veteran impact defenseman. But I think that this is a much more competent lineup with Tarasenko and Motte dropped in can be at least argued to be comparable to last year in terms of overall points. Obviously, offense is still overall down, but defense is overall up. So, yes, it'll be fun to see how this plays out.
Absolutely.
I was talking in circles there. I had to stop myself. Scotty.
Brian.
Any final thoughts, brother?
I don't think so, man. We ball.
Happy 4th of July to our listeners. We'll be back,
4th.
I assume tomorrow. So we'll find out. I mean, I don't have a reason not to, so why not? Same time, same place. It's your team.
He said, why not? Why not?
Every day.
Why not?
Why not? At least I want to keep at least one of the jobs I have. The only job I have.
This is crazy self-deprecation to end an episode on.
Yeah.
Every day.